To our lecture tonight. We're going to continue with Pirkeh Avot because this is not the time now to say Pirkeh Avot between Pesach and Atzeret, right? What's Atzeret? Shavuot. Those 49 days that we have in between, we learn Pirkei Avot, right? What's the reason why? What's the reason why we learn Pirkei Avot at this time? The reason is because we have to become unified as a nation to accept the Torah on Shavuot. Shavuot is the time that we're giving the Torah. That was the time the Torah was given. You understand? So in order to accept the Torah, we have to be unified as one people, one nation, under God, indivisible. You know, like as they say, right? Lehavdil, right? That's the idea. So in order to be unified, we have to work on our character traits. We shouldn't fight with each other. You know, have all kinds of conflicts and all kinds of issues and so on and so on. Treat each other with respect, right? And so Pirkei Avot, right, is what gives you like the power to fix this problem. You understand? So this is the reason why we do Pirkei Avot. It's talking about character traits, you know, a lot of things like that, or ethical, you know, issues, whatever. So I want to tell you something interesting, right? That tells us here in the second chapter, right? It says like this: Al tadin et chaverecha ad shetagia limkomo. Very simple, right? Rule, and this rule is very well known by everybody, right? If I tell you now what it means, you're gonna know right away. Oh yeah, I've heard that. You know. So what does it mean? Don't judge your fellow until you come to his place. It's a very known rule, right? So let's explain, right, according to the simple meaning, what that means. What that means is, right, that you come, always we're judgmental, you know? We always judge our fellow man. We don't judge ourselves. We're too busy judging other people, you know what I mean? Which is the wrong approach, by the way. You know why? Because a person really should have self-judgment, self-criticism. What are you worried about this guy? What's it to you? You know what this guy does. Worry about yourself first. You know, first your own problems. So a person has to be self-critical. You know, this is the way to be the proper Jew. So what we're saying is like this, right? Even if you want to judge other people, let's say, right? You already judge yourself, and you already fixed yourself, and you became perfect 100%. Still, right? When you judge them, though, don't judge them until you come to their place. What does that mean? You don't know. Every person, every Jew in this world has a different predicament, has a different situation, and they act according to that situation. So you can't judge them until you get to that situation, because you don't know what it feels like to be there.
Until you can walk in my shoes.
Right, exactly. To be in their shoes. That's the idea, you know. We always have like this, right? This known dictum, right? Don't judge somebody until you get step into his shoes.
Right.
This is the idea. So a person has to know that lots of behavior that Jews exhibit is because of this particular situation that they have in their life. They do all kinds of things because they had all kinds of issues that they dealt with in their life, whether it's their family life, the way they were raised, right? They have all kinds of pressures at work, at the job, you know, here, there, everything, right? All kinds of pressures everywhere.
Yeah.
So because of that, a person that can make his behavior more extreme, right? He becomes a little bit more rude, more nervous, right? Very rough around the edges,
Critical.
things like this, right? And he does things which normal people don't do. So you look at him and you say, oh, you know, what is this guy? He's crazy, this guy. How does he behave like that? What kind of behavior is this? You know, this is not normal the way he behaves. But you don't realize, right, that he's got a lot of pressures, he's got a lot of issues going on from his family, from his work, all kinds of things going on. His children are bothering him. You know how it is, right? This, that, all kinds of things. His wife is not getting along with his wife. He's not getting along with his parents, right? He's having arguments with his father, all kinds of things. He's fighting with his brother, you know. Okay, you know how it is, right? Day and night, these things go on.
Stop praying.
Right? You know what it is, right? So, therefore, right, a person can never judge somebody until you come to his shoes, to a situation, because you don't know what it feels like to be where he is. You're in a different situation. Everybody has their own predicament in life. This is the idea, you know?
Yes.
So, in order to understand this a little bit better, right, everybody knows now what I told you, right? Everybody knows this is nothing new for anybody here, right? But you know, there's one story that we learn in the Bible which really highlights this principle very strongly. You know what I'm talking about? You're not going to guess. Okay, I'll tell you. You're never going to guess. So you know what we're talking about? We're talking about the story of Yerovam ben Nevat and Shlomo Melech. Right?
I would have never guessed.
Well, I knew it. I guessed that you would never guess. Okay, so what does that mean? Right? There's a story over here, which one of the most profound and powerful stories that we have in the Bible. This story. You know, if you don't know the story, by the way, you're missing a big chunk of our heritage. I must tell you, right? So what are we talking about? We're talking like this, right? Shlomo Melech, King Solomon, as he's called, right, in America. So you know that he was one of the greatest kings that ever lived. In terms of his wisdom, in terms of his power, in terms of his wealth, right? One of the wealthiest kings that ever lived. Number one, right, in all categories, right? Number one, check, 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 check. He was number one in every category.
Looks also, Rabbi?
Well, yeah, well, you can imagine. I mean, a person, yeah. The truth is that we don't have a picture of him. We don't have a picture, but to be honest with you, you can pretty much assume, that all these kings, right, had very imposing kinds of faces. You know what I mean? These people were, they look just the way they are. In other words, just the way he is, that he's very wise and very,
What, no
powerful.
artists? No
So he
artists?
looks just like that too.
No artists back then? Like they put for the,
There may have
like for
been,
the
but probably
president?
those artworks already have been,
Portrait.
gone, right? They've been gone for a long time, right? So the point is like this: that now Shlomo Melech, right, one of the most powerful kings that ever lived. So what happened was, right, that Shlomo Melech had many servants that were serving him because he couldn't do the whole job of running the country by himself, right? There was many things going on over there, all kinds of services going on, all kinds of issues going on, how to administer the country properly.
Sorry.
So one of the things that he had, right, he had a system like this where every month of the year, 12 months out of the year, right, he had one minister each month that was assigned to support the kingdom for that month. So I'll explain to you what that means, right? What that means is like this, that they need, the kingdom, right, needs a budget every year, right? And they spend a lot of money. You know how it is, right? They go all the way. Fancy wines, fancy champagnes, fancy meats, this, that, all kinds of fancy foods, fancy lifestyle, right? Audis, Mercedes, all kinds of stuff. You know how it is, right? There's no end to it. They live a very lavish lifestyle. So in order to support the lavish lifestyle, you need a budget. Where does that come from? It doesn't come from the personal money of the king. It comes from the people, from tax money, right? That's what it is, yeah? You know that, right? So now, what happens is like this, that he needs that money every month, right, to have a budget. So that each minister, who is the king, right, the president of his tribe, there were 12 tribes, right? So 1 month out of the year, he has to supply the king with his needs from his tribe's land, from that area, right, that he lives in. You understand? So the budget was being arranged like this. This is the way it was.
Serfs.
So one of those ministers, right, was Yerovam ben Nevat. What does that mean? Yerovam ben Nevat was from the tribe of Ephraim, right? This is the tribe that he was from, and he had the job to support the kingdom for 1 month out of the year. That's the way it was. Okay, so now the Yerovam ben Nevat, though, besides being that he was a minister, he was also a very, very, very big chacham. You understand? Big chacham.
Okay.
So because he was a big chacham, he was like, he could pretty much like stand toe to toe with Shlomo Melech. He was big enough to stand by him and to argue with him and to put him in his place. Can you imagine such a big rabbi like this? Big chacham. Yerovam ben Nevat. He was big enough. He was the biggest rabbi of the land, right? In that generation. Nobody was like him, they say.
Knows
Right?
everything.
His knowledge was perfect, right? No blemishes. Everything he knew from A to Z. He had no lack in his knowledge anywhere, any place in the Torah. That's the way he was. Perfect knowledge of the Torah. Yerovam ben Nevat. So Shlomo Melech saw that he's such a wise man, right? And also he's very hardworking, like a big balabusta, person who can really take care of things. You know what I mean? You put something in charge, you put him in charge of something, it's taken care of. Don't even have to. You don't have to. Don't think about it. It's done. It's done. Consider it done. That's the way he was. You know what I mean? He was kind of minister like this. Shlomo Melech, therefore, right, considered him to be like a very prominent minister. Very much respected him.
Big macher.
So right, big macher, exactly right. That's the idea, right? I like that. So now, what happens is like this, right? Shlomo Melech decides, right, to marry the daughter of Paro. Right?
Oh.
Did you know that?
No.
You didn't know that,
What
right?
did Pharaoh say about
Okay.
this?
I guess there's no Hollywood material over there.
What did the Pharaoh say?
There's no Hollywood. You should tell them to make a
saying.
movie about that.
They probably
Okay, whatever.
did. They probably did. We're going to find it probably tonight. That was later.
Okay.
YouTube.
Okay.
The one right after
So,
yours.
right, yeah. This is the YouTube, not the YouTube.
The
YouTube.
YouTube.
YouTube. Okay. So,
I
what,
wanna go now.
what am I telling you right now? Shlomo Melech decides to marry the daughter of Paro. By the way, they say he had, the Torah tells us he had 1,000 wives. Can you imagine?
He was an
1,000.
Arab. He was an Arab.
He put the Arabs to shame. You know what I mean? Okay, can't even compare,
He
right?
ruined their wives.
So what happens like this, right? That many of these wives that he had were foreigners. What does that mean? They were converts. He converted them from other nations, right? So one of his wives was also the daughter of Paro. He converted her, right, and brought her in to be the queen. Now she was really the queen. What am I saying, right? That she was the main wife of Paro. She was like the top-notch wife, number one. The mistress. The mistress of the house. That's the way she was. Yeah. Why did she have such a prominent position, by the way, in the family? What's the reason? What, she had 1,000 wives? Why her? What's the reason why she should be the main wife? Because she was something very, very special. She was like top-notch lady who knew like how to live life to the fullest. Like she knew everything about life, how to do this, how to do that, and she was the ultimate woman. You know what I'm talking about? In other words, she knew how to be ladylike. And to feminine charm. She knew how to do everything.
She smelled from myrrh.
They say, by the way, that she was so powerful with this. How powerful was she? That the night that they got married, they say, right? It says in the Midrash, Shlomo Melech got married with her. So they say, right, that night they stayed up all night. They didn't go to sleep that night, him and her. Wow. So what did she do, right, to entertain him so much? So you know what she did?
Dancing.
Oh, there you go, right? This guy's a smart man, right? Smart. Right? So they say, right, that this lady, she was so prominent, in all these things. She knew how to do everything. So she performed like every dance that there is in every nation, like every international. She knew all the dances. So she entertained him. She entertained him with every type of dance possible that you could. And she was also a singer as well. She sang and she danced. How beautiful performance she did for him. All night she was entertaining him like that. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Wait.
Thank you.
We're doing the lecture now. It's not the time for that now. So, Rabotai, as we said, this is what's going on. So Shlomo Melech, right, is getting the time of his life. But they say, right, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that Shlomo Melech got married to the daughter of Paro, he was very, very grieved by this, what happened.
What did Pharaoh say?
Didn't like it.
What did Pharaoh say?
He was very, very grieved by this. Right?
And which Pharaoh was this?
This was, good question, right? We call him Pharaoh Neko, right? Pharaoh Nico, yeah.
That was way after Ramses.
Right? So, anyway, right? These Pharaohs, why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu like the fact that Shlomo Melech married Paro's daughter? What's the reason why? You know why? Because she knew how to live in this world, but spiritually speaking, she was a midget. She wasn't spiritually on a high level. You understand? So what does that mean, right? Shlomo Melech, who's the highest spiritual being that there is in the world, he has to deal with this lady who's totally immersed in this world. Just the opposite of what
party people.
Party people. Yeah, that's the idea. You understand? That's the idea. That's the way it was.
The party people.
So what happens is, right, that Kadosh Baruch Hu now says to Shlomo Melech, listen, I'm very upset at you. But not only that, he married also 1,000 ladies, right? Many of them foreigners, as we said. But what happened was that he loved the daughter of Paro the most out of all his wives. Because of her, as we said, right? Her expertise, her perfection, right? And all these performances and all so on and so on. So what happened was, right, that he built her a special house just for her. Special palace for her. He built.
The change room.
You understand? So this palace was very, very fancy. So what happened was that the whole issue was not this, that he built a palace for her. The issue was, where was the palace built? Right? Where did she? I think you're intervening a little bit too much. Maybe you should, slow down a little bit. Mechila, So Mechila, I apologize. So right, so we're saying right like this, that this palace was built in a very bad location. What do I mean by that? This location, right, it was called the Milo. The Milo. What is the Milo? The Milo is a place where the pilgrims, the Jews who used to come for the pilgrimages. What does that mean, pilgrimages? that they used to come for the holidays, right? Sukkot, Shavuot, and Pesach, right? All the Jews had to come and go to the Bet HaMikdash at that time. There was a big mitzvah like that. So, lehavdil, right?
Similar.
Lehavdil. Don't compare the nuts to the Jews. So, not the same thing, right? So anyway, right? Comes now Shlomo Melech, and that area where the pilgrimers were usually used to sleep there, put up their tents and sleep there when they came for the pilgrimage. That's exactly where he built the house. Can you imagine?
So it took up the space.
Right. So he like kind of like
Oh.
gave them the boot. Where they're gonna sleep now, where they're gonna stay when they come. So this was something which Hakadosh Baruch Hu didn't like that this happened, right? So what happened was, right, that he put this spirit now in who? Yerovam ben Nebat saw all this, right? He saw what was going on. He built the house like that. So what happens is, right, that Yerovam ben Nebat is very upset about this. How could you do such a thing like this? You build the palace of this Goya, Shiksa, Shiksa. You're building a palace for a Shiksa, and this is the place where they're supposed to be, the pilgrimers are supposed to be coming. What kind of thing is this? This is disgrace. This is what he was complaining about. So you know what he did? The door is open over here. You gotta lock that door. You can close it, David. There's a draft coming in there. So what I tell you is like this. Right now, comes Yerovam ben Nebat.
It's cold now.
He's very angry about this. Very upset about this situation. So he comes. There's like some kind of a ceremony that they're doing with the king. The whole people are there. Everybody's there. So he comes, Yerovam ben Nebat, right in front of the king, and he brings with him. You know what he did? He brought with him 1,000 people to defend him. Like a gang. Like a
Mobster.
right. He comes like that.
Protection.
Where did he get this 1,000 people from his tribe? Members of his tribe he brought. So he's like, I'm an important guy. I'm a minister. I got 1,000 people with me. So he comes over there, right? And he tells Shlomo Melech, first of all, you know what he did? He disgraced him before he started even talking. How did he disgrace him? You know what he did? Once he got close to the king, in those days, by the way, everybody used to wear tefillin all day. That's the way it was. Not just for the morning prayers. Also for the arm. Yeah, they used to wear tefillin all day. Right? It's a package deal. One goes with the other. You know what I mean? So happens like this, right? Comes now Yerovam ben Nebat with his tefillin, like everybody else. But you know what he does? When he gets close to the king, he takes off the tefillin. So you know what that means? This is like you know what it means? It's like a middle finger, basically.
Yeah,
Why is that?
Because everybody's wearing it, and now he's taking it off.
Right, I'll explain to you a little bit deeper.
I am not.
Yeah.
He's not. I don't believe in what you believe.
Not exactly. You know what it is? What he was trying to tell him was like this. He's telling him, listen, because there's a halacha like this, right? The halacha says that when a person is wearing tefillin, if he goes to a place which is dirty or filthy, he's got to take it off because it's not fitting for the holiness of the tefillin. That's why we can't wear it in the bathroom, right? You go to the bathroom, you got to take it off.
Oh yeah.
So what was he doing? He was saying to Shlomo, you know what? I'm coming in a filthy place when I come to you. I'm taking off my tefillin.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of like
What did he say?
You understand?
What did he say? What the king?
So Shlomo Melech, right? Was shocked that he came just like that, but that wasn't really the shock. That's not the punchline over here, right? Something even much worse. So what happens is like this, right? He tells him in front of everybody, starts yelling at him. Why did you do that? Right? What a disgrace you did. You took the daughter apart. Oh, and you gave her this palace right in the place where people used to come for the pilgrimage. Shame on you. That's what he told him. Can you imagine?
Gayavek.
Shame on you. So what happened was, right, that Shlomo Melech, once he heard this, he was totally in shock. How could such a thing like this? So what does he do? Right away, he gets his his army people there, right? The soldiers. He says, "Go grab him, kill him." He wanted to. Why to kill him? What's the reason why? Right? Mored b'malchut, chayav mita. You know what that means, right? If you rebel against the king, you're liable to death. The king can kill you right on the spot. No judgment, no court, no jury, right? No hung jury, right? No this, no that, nothing.
Martial law.
Right there on the spot, he kills you. Right? Makes a shish kebab out of you right there. You understand? So now, right? Yerovam ben Nevat runs away. He was he was probably a fast runner. This guy, So he cleared out, started to run. They couldn't catch him, So what happened was that he went to, where he ran off to?
No.
Take a guess, right?
The desert.
He went to Egypt. He went to Mitzrayim, right? Why is this like so ironic? Because that's where he took the wife from that he was objecting about,
Yeah.
So that's exactly where he went. That's exactly where he went.
Provides from
So what he did
Pharaoh.
was, right, he went to Paro and he said, listen, I ran away from the king. Can you shield me? Like I need protection. So Paro protected him.
Oh.
Can you imagine?
But he knew that he took the.
Yeah, he knew everything.
Oh.
This was public knowledge. So that's what he did. So what's the story? The story is what they say that Shlomo Melech was looking for him. And what does that mean? That he had to stay in Mitzrayim all the time that Shlomo Melech was alive. Because if he would have stepped foot out of there, Shlomo Melech would have gotten him. Right? He would have been dead meat. You understand? So what happens is now, right? Shlomo Melech dies. How long did he live, by the way, Shlomo Melech? He lived 52 years. He was actually very young when he died. 52. Young man. But nevertheless, right, this was about 40 years after this incident. He ruled for 40 years.
Wow.
He was king for 40 years. So what happens like this,
teenager.
right? Because, he became a king when he was 12. Yeah. So what happens is now, once Shlomo Melech dies, right? Now, who's supposed to take over the kingdom? His son, right? Who is that? Rechavam. Rechavam was the son of Shlomo, right? So what happened was that once Shlomo died, Yerovam ben Nevat, who was there for 40 years in Egypt, all of a sudden wakes up, Oh, I saw on CNN, the king is dead. Oh, why? That's very interesting, huh? So he says, you know what? I'm going to go back now,
Take his wife.
and I'm going to make a big mess over there, make a revolution.
Oh boy.
Cool. Make a coup, right? He must have been aligned with the Comey, right? Those guys, McCabe, those guys, right? He must have been aligned with them. He goes, I'm going to make a coup. Right? So, so he goes, comes back, and he starts messing around with the people, tells them, listen, I've been in exile for 40 years, but now let's make everything straight. Let's straighten everything out. What does that mean, right? He says, you know what? We're going to go now to the new king before he's coronated, right? Rechavam, and we're going to make conditions for him. If he doesn't meet our conditions, we're not going to go with his kingdom. We're going to rebel against him.
Okay.
That's what happens, right? So yeah. So what happens is like this, right? He goes, they meet up. You know where? Where they meet? The whole camp in Shechem, right? Shechem. Why Shechem? Because they say, right, Shechem is destined for tragedy over there. So this was another tragedy that occurred over there, right? What was the first tragedy? That Dinah got raped over there, right? This is the place where she got raped, abducted, raped, right? This is the same place. They say it's destined for bad, right? Exactly, right. The trouble place, right? The bad neighborhood, exactly, right, exactly. So what happens like this, right? They go over there to what? To coronate the king, the new king, Rechavam. So comes Yerovam ben Nevat over there, with the 10 tribes that he's, leading them, and he's telling the king, listen, okay, we'll make you the king, fine, you're the son of the king, you deserve it. But on one condition, right? You got to lower the taxes because
Too much.
your father, Shlomo, the taxes that he was charging us were way, way too high, right?
Rip us off.
Right. He must have been a Republican, this guy, right? He wanted to lower the taxes, You understand? So I told him, he said, we got to lower the taxes, we got to do a tax cut, Tax cut, yeah. That's what I told him. Yeah. In those days they had that too,
Yeah, wow.
So they said, they told to Rechavam, give us all across the board tax cut, 30%. We're with you. No, we're going with you. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem. Yeah?
War.
That's what he says. So, right, Rechavam tells the people like this, right? He answers them. He says, you know what? Give me 3 days to consider your offer, and I will get back to you. 3 days, right? So what happens is, right, there goes Rechavam, and starts to consult with his advisors, So he had two sets of advisors. We talked about this before, maybe last year, right? Whatever. So who were the two sets of advisors, right? One was the set that was with his father, Shlomo, the older guys, the elders, those guys. The other set of advisors were his young, high school buddies, the ones that he went to high school with, you know what I mean? Yeshiva boys, with the nice little hats and, running around playing basketball. These guys, these types of guys, you know what I mean? So he consulted with both groups. First he went to the elders, the ones who advised Shlomo. So he goes to them, he tells them, he says, listen, says, this is the offer that they gave me. What should I do, What do you advise? So the elders told him like this. They said, you know what? This time, grant them their wish. Do what they say. They said like this, you got to give them just one little, waiver. One little gesture, Once you give them that gesture, it says, they'll be with you all your life. They'll never rebel against you. Just give them, bend down a little bit, give them a little leeway. Be a little bit, malleable over here, right? Be a little bit compromised. So then he goes, right, to the young guys, right? The guys who are playing basketball, these guys, right? And he goes over to them, tells them, no, what do you say? Right? So they said, no. They say, what you got to tell them? You got to tell them like this. If my father, right, took 40%, I'm going to take, 70%, right? Like, Cortez, AOC, like that, yeah. I'm going to be like Cortez. I'm going to take 70%.
Take it all.
Like Bernie, like Bernie. How much does Bernie want? 50%? How much does he want? 55, right?
I think 90.
There's Bernie and then there's Cortez, right? There's different levels, right? There's different levels, right?
Everything will be free.
So they said, listen, you want us to be like Trump? We're going to be like Bernie. That's what we're going to do to you. That's what you should tell them. Scare them, In other words, beat them into submission, until they give in. They wave the white flag. Do like that. So what does he do, right? He likes the advice of the younger ones better, right? Because they're friends, they're buddies from childhood, they grew up together. So he goes and takes the advice of the younger ones. So what does he do, right? He fell right into the trap of Yerovam ben Nevat. He knew that this was gonna, this was a trap. A very wise man. So what happens is he goes back there, and they rebel against each other, right? The rebellion goes on. They break up, and that's it, right? The kingdom was divided from there until the end of the first temple. We're talking about for about 400 years, right? The kingdom was divided because of this issue. Never got back together, by the way. There was some few years, they say, right? There was some kind of a alliance between them, but nevertheless, right? In general, never got back together. So they say, right, that this is what Yerovam ben Nevat did. But you know what? What's the punchline over here, right? The bottom line. The bottom line is that after Yerovam ben Nevat, right, he did all these acts of heroism, as if you will, these acts of, bravery, courage, standing up against the king, giving it to him, give it to you. So then he himself, what happened when he became king? He also became king, right? So he became much more depraved than any other king that there ever was. He led the people to idolatry. He put up idols for them, to worship idols. He made them into Christians. That's what happened. He made it. That's what he did. Yeah. Can you imagine? 400 years they were like that, serving idols.
Yeah.
Because of his.
I have a friend, Roland, a Polish guy in Florida, and we talk about this stuff all the time. And I said, Roland, I apologize if we don't pray to statues like you guys. And he got very offended.
Right.
He goes, those statues of, the saints, everything. He goes, those are Roman descendants. So he said something about it's more of a tradition for them than really.
Right, but a piece of good advice, though, by the way, you should know, for you, is not to offend them like that.
No, I didn't.
Because this is their tradition. They heard it from their forefathers. You know what I mean? So there's no reason to start now to make these quabbles. There's no reason for that.
No.
Treat them with respect.
When somebody asks me, what's with those cubicles you guys put on your head? That's offensive.
What's with eating?
So you're retaliating, in other words. It's retaliation.
And what's with killing somebody and making confession and eating a wafer and everything's okay?
No, absolutely not. I said the difference between Jews.
Yeah.
And I said that and you guys are that we don't have any statues or intermediaries between us and God. We don't.
You know what I do, by the way,
Right.
to avoid these problems. I don't enter into right, theological discussions with them.
Yeah.
I don't enter into these things. If they start to talk about it, I just like turn my head and
Yeah,
walk away.
that's the best
They
way.
want
That's
to
what I do.
know, they'll get it.
Yeah.
But if not, then you
understand?
shouldn't give in.
Because you don't want to get into the, you don't want to get into these things, situations. It's not really, it's not really a good thing. There's nothing good will come out of that. These kinds of things. You know what I mean? So therefore, to be honest with you, the best thing for a Jew, good advice, don't have too much close friendship with goyim. Don't get attached with them, because you're always going to get into these issues with them. You know what I mean? You should touch yourself with Jews. If you're doing business with a goy, okay, fine. It's business is business. That's something else. Fine, no problem. But don't become like a close friend, with a goy, because it's always going to lead to these issues. It's not going to never, unless the goy is like very unusually righteous. There are some people like that, but very few. It's very rare. There's such a thing like that. So that's why the Chazal tell us, right, that we just stick with our own. Stick with your own.
Then they call us separatists.
They're always going to hate you, no matter what.
Yeah.
But that's not for you to worry about that. What they say, You have to worry about what's good for you. What's good for you, what's good for God. That's the idea. That's the idea. So that's the way to deal with this issue. But getting back to what we said, right? What time?
Did I get into a big fight with
Right?
somebody over that?
Yeah, there's no reason to fight with them. Really, they shouldn't fight with them.
Well, you got offended. You told me. I said,
Yeah, they get
sorry.
offended. Sure,
I
they
said,
get
I'm
offended.
sorry,
Yeah. They get offended. It's not nice. Why should you offend them for what?
I was
There's
making a joke
there's no
about,
reason. There's no reason for that.
Something. I'll tell you later.
The best thing is to keep a distance. Make it like into a cordial relationship.
I agree with the rest.
You know what I mean? Cordial. Make a cordial
That was
relationship.
funny.
Don't get too close. There's no reason to get too close.
The weight difference.
There's business. There's business. There's something else. I'm not talking about that. Anyway,
I
what
don't
time?
like to talk about it.
Yeah, it's better.
But you
Yeah,
know
it's
what?
better.
From
Yeah.
my experience,
Yeah.
I don't mean to veer off from my experience. It's not us that bring them into these conversations. It's usually derogatory remarks from them about the Jews.
Because you're too close with them. That's the idea. You're getting too
No,
close.
I
Yeah,
understand.
don't
No,
get
I've
that
had
close
people-
enough. Right? Yeah.
I've had people that
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Right. Yeah, come up to you. Right.
Come
right,
up to me,
yeah.
give me a pamphlet, and I would tell them no, and they assume that I'm a Jew. So one woman tells me many years ago, "You are Jewish?" Yes, I said, yes, I am. She said, "Oh, good. But I love the Jewish peoples. But the problem is the Jewish peoples do not accept, who. So it's not us. We're usually, we don't go around trying to convert.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I'm very critical of those guys on Queens Boulevard when they start target practicing. My friend, you're Jewish? When they try to put the felon in, it's not us.
Okay, let's get back to our discussion, right, Rabbi?
Yeah.
Now let's not look too much off. So what I want to tell you is like this, right? Now, Yerovam ben Nevat, he caused the Jews to sin more than any other king, more than any other leader. So this is the irony of this whole story, Why did I tell you the whole story? Because the irony here is like this, right? That he was the one who was supposed to be, right, the fanatic, objecting against Shlomo HaMelech for what he did. But he himself wound up being 100,000 times more than Shlomo HaMelech. Worse. Not the son. He objected against Shlomo. Right?
The Egyptian wife. Come on, keep on going.
Right. No, I'm sorry. But yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
So what happens is like this. Comes the Pirkeh Avot regarding this and tells you, listen, don't judge a person until you get to his situation, until you step into his shoes. This is exactly what it's talking about. Right? This case is the highlight of this idea. Why? What's the reason why? Because what was the mistake of Yerovam ben Nevat? There was one great mistake that he made. Right? What he did is what he assumed incorrectly, that his level was the level of Shlomo HaMelech. This was the mistake that he made. He didn't realize that Shlomo HaMelech is on a different level. What do I mean by that? As we said, right, when it comes to wisdom, Yerovam ben Nevat was ultimately wise. No problem. But there's also other things in life besides wisdom, right? There's also position. What does that mean? That a person who's a king doesn't have the position of a minister. It's not the same thing. What's the difference? The king is above the minister.
Yes.
What do I mean to tell you by that? That they say, right, the Chazal tell us a general rule about this. You know what the rule is? The rule is, the greater the person is, the greater the Yetzer Hara is also. There's a rule like that, right? If you are greater in wisdom, in your position, the Yetzer Hara is also greater.
Makes sense.
You know what I mean? Because the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer HaTov always go together in conjunction, right? One with the other. If this side is great, the side is always going to get great. So therefore, right, the truth is that the person who's greater can sin even worse than the person who's very, very mediocre. This is the idea, you know? He can come to do bigger sins because he has bigger Yetzer Hara. So what are we saying, right? That here also the king is above the minister, you see? So what does that mean, right? The Yetzer Hara of the king is not the Yetzer Hara of the minister. Not the same thing. So what do we care about that? What's the idea? The idea is like this, right? That Yerovam ben Nebat should have realized that Shlomo Melech, that he married the daughter of Paro, he objected against the fact that he built a palace for her, right, all these kinds of things. He didn't realize that he's dealing with somebody who was a bigger Yetzer Hara than him. This was his mistake. You know? He's not the king. So he judged him according to his own shoes. He didn't judge him according to Shlomo's shoes. This was the mistake that he made. So therefore, right, there was also another mistake that he made, Rabbi. You know what the mistake was? The mistake was that he embarrassed him in public. You know? You're not supposed to do that. What do I mean by that? Let's a little bit, right, try to understand what that means. I ask you a general question, right? A person who does a sin in public, are you allowed to embarrass him, like in public, and say, "Oh, why are you doing that?" I ask you a question. Ask you a question, right? Interesting question. So you would think that this is the answer, like you say. Yeah, this is the logical thing, right? But the truth is that the halacha doesn't say like that. I'll explain to you what flagim. I like that.
The halacha is very mean-spirited.
So what does the halacha say? Halacha says that when a person sins in public, right, you're supposed to rebuke him in public. Why are you doing that?
Everybody should know.
Yeah.
That you are a rat,
Smart man.
bastard or whatever.
That's it.
There's no leniency. There's no.
I'll explain to you what that means.
Maybe he's not, doesn't know this.
We're gonna go slow. We're gonna go slow with that, right? We're gonna slow walk it. Slow walk, right? Slow walk.
Moonwalking.
Right. Moonwalk.
Right? Just hurry up.
So what happens is like this, right? Be patient. Don't worry. Don't. You're not going anywhere. Don't worry. You don't have a wedding tonight, do you? Okay. You're not have a wedding tonight. Okay. So even if you had a wedding, by the way, this is more important than the wedding. So what I tell you is like this, right now, that a person who does a sin in public, say the poskim, you're supposed to rebuke him in public. Why is that? What's the reason why? You know what the answer is? The answer is, yeah, it's a good point, but you need to say a little bit more than that. The point is like this, right? That when a person does a sin in public, what is this called in halacha? You know what this is called? Oh, there you go. There you go. Right? It's called Chilul Hashem. Why? What's the reason why? That's it. That's the idea. Right. A person who's doing a sin in public, he's desecrating the name of God. So therefore, right now, we have a choice. We can either defend the honor of the person who did that, or God himself, right? Who comes first? God comes first. This is the reason why. You understand? God comes before you. So like if you see, right, like we talked about this, right? Somebody coming up to the shul with a Bentley, we talked about this, right? You got to tell him, listen, why are you driving up to the shul with a Bentley? What's wrong with you? Shabbos today, it's Yom Kippur. Yeah, it's why are you coming here? What is this business? You got to tell him.
Maybe he didn't want his bumper scratched, and he parked on the hydrant.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so you're supposed to rebuke him in public, in order that, because Chilul Hashem is worse than embarrassing him. The kavod of God comes before his kavod. That's what it says in the Mishnah Berurah. That's what it says in Chaf Chaim.
Not to embarrass him.
You should embarrass him.
So
You should
Yeah.
I see.
So they're entitled to a fair hearing? Is that the idea?
He's doing it in public, So you got to tell him, why are you doing this? Now, things like this, right? This is regarding, we're talking about between you and your friend, right? Anybody over here or anybody over there. When it comes to the king, though, that's a little bit different, you see?
He's the boss.
Oh. So you know what it is? They say, right, that no matter what happens, a person shouldn't insult the king in public. This also applies, by the way, to a president as well.
King has no clothes.
Why? What's the reason why? What's the reason why the kingdom is so sacred?
Well, the king.
Why?
King,
Why is that?
The king is the boss, and he's the one that makes all the laws. And
Yeah.
stuff for him.
Yeah, he's an authority figure.
He's not God,
Right.
but he's his own
Oh,
entity.
so you know what I tell you now, right? In order to explain that a little bit better.
And he appoints the priests and the fathers.
Right, he's the one who,
and all that stuff.
He runs the show.
Under him.
He runs the show. Yeah. Okay. So that's good. Very good. So let me tell you something interesting, right? That the truth is, the kingdom in this world is a representation of God itself. That's His representative in this world here and this down here. Whether it's Trump, whether it's Bibi, whether it's what's that guy? Macaroni over there in France, Macaroni, right? This guy, all the same. This is a effectuation of God's presence in this world is the kingdom. So therefore, a person has to respect the kingdom always, right? No matter what happens, you cannot disgrace the kingdom, because it's like you're disgracing God. You see, this is the problem.
But the king did disgrace God.
Yeah.
When he became
Yes.
Protestant, right? When he said it's going to be,
Oh.
I want to get a divorce, so this is how I can do it, and made it the laws.
Which king are you talking about?
Was that Henry VIII? Was that Henry VIII?
Okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't aware of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So anyway, right, getting back to what we said.
No, the real kings, not the.
When you disgrace the kingdom, so therefore, right, this is a red line in Torah law. Don't ever disgrace the kingdom in public. This is a very big no-no. You know?
The holy kingdom.
By the way, we see this very clearly from the most extreme example. Where do we see that? In Paro, right? Because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent Moshe Rabbeinu to Paro, one of the things that he warned him is this: listen, you're going to now go and you're going to twist his arm and force him to do something he doesn't want to do. But nevertheless, you have to treat him with respect. Don't treat him like a little cat, in the alley cat. This is the king. You're going to the king, He's a wicked man. He's a sinner, idolater, the worst of the worst. Nobody's worse than him, The biggest sinner that you could actually have. Paro was number one, right? In all categories, right? Nevertheless, told him Moshe Rabbeinu, treat him with respect.
Worse than
He's a king.
Yeah, well, no, he's the. He's the chief. He's the boss.
You understand? So, getting back to what we said, right? Now, Yerovam ben Nevat, Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't like what he did. The rebuked Shlomo Melech in public. He thought, Hakadosh Baruch Hu said to Yerovam ben Nevat, in his thoughts I'm talking about, right? Wow, you're such a wise guy, huh? You went to the king and you embarrassed him like that? Huh? You made a fool out of him? You made a monkey out of him in public? You took off your tefillin? You started to yell at him? Huh? Very nice, huh? Very good. So he says, you know what I'm gonna do to you? I'm gonna punish you in a way, right, which I don't punish other people. What does that mean? I'm gonna put you in his position. You're gonna become king. And then we're gonna see what you're gonna be. I'm gonna show you what you're gonna become. You understand? So this is the reason why he made him a king. One of the reasons was because why? He wanted to show him, let's see what you do when you become king. Right? Let's see what happens to you. Let's see who's really better, right? When you go into his shoes, let's see who's gonna be better. So what happened was he made him king, right? And as we said, right, it was the biggest sinner that there was. This is what happened. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right, what he showed Yerovam ben Nevat is, don't judge a person until you get into the shoes. Now we see what you become, right? You're the worse than anybody else. Nobody's as bad as you, right? So a person has to always know that when somebody's above you, right, in level, whatever it is, right, whether it's kingdom or whether it's right government or whatever it is, or in all kinds of things in life, in wisdom, he's bigger than you in wisdom also, whatever. Don't try to judge him on your own level, because you don't know where he's standing. This was a big mistake that Yerovam ben Nevat made, right, with Shlomo. So the truth is, right, that if you want to know Yerovam ben Nevat, right, it's a whole discussion about him. It says in the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, Yerovam ben Nevat eno chelek l'olam haba. He has no portion in the world to come. Right? Why is that? Because he caused the Jews to sin. Anybody who causes the Jews to sin has no portion in the world to come. Not only diverted himself into sin, but also the whole nation as well. And he succeeded, by the way, right? Not like, these other guys who failed. He actually did the job. You know what I mean? He did the job. And he knew how to do it very well. He pulled all kinds of stunts, all kinds of tricks, right? All kinds of things like this. So you see, this is a very good moral lesson for us. Don't be so judgmental about other people. First, look at yourself, what you are, what you're supposed to be, and then, afterwards, if you get to his position, by the way, Rabbi Nachman in Breslov, what he said about this Pirkeh Avot, he said like this, right? As we said, here the Pirkeh Avot says, don't judge a person until you get to his level, go into his shoes. And you know what Rabbi Nachman in Breslov he adds? He says, you never will be in his shoes. What does that mean? Nobody can really go into the shoes of somebody else, right? You don't know exactly what that person is doing in his life. You're never going to be exactly precisely what he was. So therefore, what is he trying to tell you, the rabbi? That don't ever judge him at all, right? Even if don't do it, because you're never going to be in his shoes. So it's a wise thing to say, you know what I mean? So Yerovam ben Nevat, the Chachamim tell us he has no chelek olam haba. There's several kings that they said this about, right? He was one of them because he caused the Jews to sin. Okay, interesting, right? Interesting idea. I want to also write. If we have time, do we have time, or are we late? You guys you want to go home?
Late, so.
Okay, so it's up to you.
3 more minutes.
If you want, I'll do another one. Okay, just one more.
So
Right, this is also a nice one.
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So it says over here like this, right? This is in Perek Hamishin, the fifth Perek, right? Fifth chapter. So it says, right, like this. I want to tell you something really funny, right? You want to hear something really, really funny? I didn't even notice
Jokes in
this.
there?
Right now, I just noticed
Is
it.
there jokes in there?
Right? No jokes, but you know what the funny thing is? That this Mishnah that we're going to tell you now, it starts right after a statement which is talking about Yerovam ben Nevat. So exactly what we talked about, that's exactly where it left off over here. Very interesting. Deja vu, whatever, okay, whatever, right? כל מי שיש לו שלושה דברים הללו הוא מתלמידיו של אברהם אבינו. So it says, right, if you have 3 character traits, you are from the disciples of Avraham Avinu. That means you're on the good side, right? Of Abraham, our forefather, right, our patriarch. If you have 3 other, right, the opposite character traits, who are you a disciple of? Of Bila'Am Rasha, right? Of the Bila'Am. Right? So what are we talking about? What character traits are we talking about, right? Let's see, right? Let's go one by one. Ain Tova, right? Good eye. Good eye. What does that mean? You see well? You have good vision, 20/20? Not talking about that, right? What does it mean, good eye? That means you look at people with a good eye. What does that mean? That's one element, right? But there's something more like central here. You know what it means to look at a good eye? That means you're looking to help him and not to destroy him. You're looking at the positive, not to destroy. You want to help the person to get out of his predicament. Let's say he has some problems, he has some issues to deal with, he's got some imperfections. So you look at him and you say, you know what, this guy's like a rough diamond. I'm going to polish him until he gets all fixed up. He's going to be a perfect diamond, polished for Mamuki, for those guys, right? It's going to be like that. That's the way a good person thinks. That's what Avraham used to do. He used to take people who were wicked, who were sinners, idolaters, and he used to bring them close to Hashem. Tell them, I'll give you some food, make a blessing, make a bracha, make after bracha, and I'm going to discuss with you about faith, right? Emunah. He used to discuss with them. He used to sit with them for hours, each individual. Can you imagine? And he would talk with them. Do you believe in God? What do you believe in? Are you atheists? Right? Are you idolater? Are you this? Right? Are you Protestant? Are you right? Whatever. Are you this? Are you Catholic? Right? Let me tell you what the truth is. And they would argue with him. They would say, "No, I don't believe that." So he would sit there with them for hours, until he convinced them that he was right. This is what he used to do. So he looked at people. How can I fix them? How can I benefit people? This is a person who has a good eye. This is what it means. So if you're like that, you're like Avraham Avinu. Right? This characteristic of Avraham Avinu. Number 1, right? Number 2, ruach nemucha. Right? This is a package deal, by the way. You have to have all 3 of these things. If you're really good, right? If you're perfect. What does that mean, ruach nemucha? Humility, right? You don't think too much of yourself, right? We talked about that, right? Narcissist, right? You're not a narcissist, just the opposite, right? Very humble person who doesn't think much of himself. Where do we see Avraham Avinu that didn't think much of himself? Because he said, right? Anochi afar ve'efer. I'm dust of the earth, right? Ashes. And I told the God, right? Told him, I'm nothing, I'm nobody, right? Not like these guys, right? Those guys, right? They made themselves into gods, I'm a God, I'm divine. Forget about God, worship me. Who the heck are you to we should worship you? You sick boy, You need some medicine, Gotta give you some surgery on your head, You got some screws loose, man. What's with you, We should worship you? Who do you think we should worship you? But the humility is what? Don't worship me. Look at God, I'm nobody. I'm just a little ant, little cockroach. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. When you have this kind of attitude, you are Talmid of Avraham Avinu. You don't consider yourself too much. You know what I mean? Forget about being a god, right? Even a human being, you're not even sure you're a human being. Even that you're not even sure about. You know what I mean? If you qualify as that, that's the idea. Number 3, right? Nebenefesh shefala. So this, right, actually sounds like exactly the same as what we just said now. It's talking about, right, a person who has a humble spirit, right, a lowly spirit. So what does that mean, right? We just talked about humility. So what is this coming to add to that? It's something else. So then we're talking about a person who can suffice with a little bit. Doesn't need like too much wealth. Not looking for fancy lifestyle, lavish, everything, super fancy, super. You can live simple, Appreciate the simple things in life. Just be a simple person. Open the fridge and have a little dinner, open up something there, Make a couple of eggs, open up some peanut butter, you know what I mean? Take some salami from there, right? Something,
I'm not getting the 2012.
Take out some carcass from the fridge and eat it. What's the problem, Every day you have to have fancy foods. Every day you have to be, going to the vacations, going to this spot and that spot. Right now he's going to Italy, then he goes to France, right? Then he goes this, he goes over there, he goes over. Live simple. What do you need all this stuff for?
Rabbi, what if one lives as simple and as humble as possible?
Yeah.
But still insists on having a 2012 S65.
Somebody just told me about that, by the way. I don't know if it was one of you guys, but they say one person told me. I think it was my son. I was talking to my son over here, and he said, I heard that the richest man in the world, who's Bezos, Bezos, you know what Trump calls him, right? Calls him the other name. I don't want to say that, right? Anyway, right? Bezos, right? They say, what car does he drive, this guy? The richest man in the world. He has $130 billion, personal money. He drives? He drives a used Volvo. No, this isn't what we're talking about.
No, you know what I mean.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. It's actually a very healthy thing what he does. You know why? Because he doesn't let the money get to him. Because if he does, he'll go crazy. He'll go nuts.
Is that why he keeps his workers on food stamps and Medicare?
God.
That's how to make money off of everybody else.
Pierre Cardin came out on the Late Show once.
Right.
And he was very rich back then, 35 years ago. And he was wearing a $20 watch.
Right.
So David Letterman said that, what are you wearing there? It looks like a really cheesy...
Yeah.
And he goes, David, it's a $20 Casio, whatever it was. I don't mind humbleness. I love it.
Right.
I have hang-ups about that myself, I don't feel comfortable, like, when people may think of me as this, over-the-top whatever.
Right.
But, somebody who's worth $130 billion, he could drive a new Volvo. And
right.
It'll be humble enough.
Well, you know what it is? I'll tell you.
It's
a good philosophy, I'll tell you. That's nothing to prove. Yeah. You know what it is? The philosophy is like this, very simple. The car works. It's working well. Why should I buy a new one? For what? Why should I buy a new car when this car works?
Yeah, first of all,
don't be a cheapskate.
I understand the point. First of all, I'm not sure it works. I'm pretty sure he's in the shop with it. Volvo is not the most reliable car. Okay?
It's good in a crash.
Yeah. The fact, the idea that it was the safest car on the road, that was debunked also. It was bull.
No, I'm talking about something. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the fact that you're taking mechanic. Once in a while, everybody's going to go to mechanic once in a while. Even for a new car, sometimes you go.
If he wants to be humble, let him buy a new
There's a recall. You got to go for a recall.
Yeah,
but I'm talking. Listen, the guy has a car. It works. He doesn't want to buy a new one.
Right. But he also doesn't want to give his workers a raise.
Another good thing, by the way, I heard about this guy, which is also very good, because people like this, I'm telling you, you should know, by the way, a person who has this much money, if he goes all the way out, he could go crazy, he'll lose his mind. He can become totally nuts. So you know what he does? A person like this also, by the way, is busy all the time. They're calling you all the time. They never leave you alone. You're always being bothered by somebody, harassed by somebody, some executives, this, that, from all over the world. Everybody's calling him. Everybody wants to speak with him. So you know what he does, right? I heard. So also my son told me this. He takes 2 hours out of the day to be with his family. No interruptions. No phone calls, no nothing. This is a very nice thing. I'll tell you something. I really appreciate this kind of life. To be honest with you,
Rabbi.
Yeah. This is very good.
Can we
Yeah.
end with this? When the twin turbo S600 came out, it was my dream back in Oakland. You were in Israel. When it got a little bit used over the years, 3 years, 4 years, it depreciated. A $130,000 car became a $50,000 car. So I was on the market. I called a guy.
We have to end with Divrei Torah, David. I'm sorry, but let's end with Divrei Torah. Not with the car maven. Right? We're not going to go to the car maven. Let's go with Divrei Torah. So like this, right now, in the car we can talk about that. So right, it says like this, right, that Avraham Avinu had all these 3 qualities. If you have these qualities, you're disciple of Avraham Avinu. Bila'Am Rasha had just the opposite, right? Bila'Am Rasha was also a very wise man. He had total great wisdom. He was a prophet, right? He had a very high level of knowledge, wisdom. He was a sorcerer, he knew how to do sorcery. Tell your friend about that, right? So, you know what it is, right? That he nevertheless, though, he had just all the opposite qualities. What does that mean, right? It tells us here, Ruach Gevoah, right? He had arrogance, right? Ain Ra'ah. So what does that mean, right? That he had an evil eye. He would look at people with evil eye. He would destroy people, looking at them. How can I find like a weak spot, that I can destroy him with that?
Like the Bukhari guy in Forest Hills High School that killed the bird by looking at it. You remember? That's Oaks.
Where does he get this? So I remember that. So it takes some time. Okay. So you understand? So Bila'am he used to destroy with his eyes. I look at you, I tear you apart. I find your weak spots. I know how to look at you. I know how to check out all your.
I believe in that, by the way, a bad eye.
Evil eye. There is such a thing like that. Yeah, for sure.
By the way, you don't even have to mean it.
Yeah, just your character. It's your character. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Very true. Third eye. Okay, so right. So now, right, Bila'am. By the way, Zohar Kadosh. You know what it says about how bad his eye was actually? First of all, he was blind in one eye. Right, one eye was missing. You know that, right? He had only one eye. Right. The other one was like a glass eye. He had something there. That's what he had. He only had one eye, but he had a very evil eye. So they say about him. You know how evil eye his was? The Zohar Kadosh says, anything that he would look at, he would destroy it.
Did he look like something like this?
So he was the original evil eye.
You understand?
He was the original.
He was the ultimate, not the original, the ultimate evil eye. The ultimate evil eye. Anything that he would look at, he would destroy with his eyes. Like tear it apart. His power was very, very great. That's where the power was, in his eye.
Did he mean to do it, or it was just?
That was his character. That was his character.
Yeah, he meant to do it then.
Right? Ruach Gevoah. What does that mean? He was also very arrogant, right? What does that mean? He considered himself to be, narcissist. I'm the center of the universe. Everything revolves around me. If you don't believe in what I say, if you don't do what I say, right, you're nobody, you're nothing, you're zero, right?
Sounds
That's
like
it.
Adam Schiff.
Full of himself.
Sounds like Adam Schiff.
There's better examples, right? You know what it is, right? These people they think that they're the greatest God's gift to mankind. That's if you don't do what I say, that's it, right? No, nothing else. This is what he was. Number 3, right? Oh, so this is also right. Nefesh Rechava, right? The third one. What does that mean? That just the opposite of Avraham Avinu, right? Avraham Avinu used to have, just whatever, eat simple, drive simple, everything simple, live simple. This guy, right? He was looking to get all the money in the world. He had tremendous desire for money, for wealth.
The best.
Everything. I want to take everything from you. Where do we see that from? By the way, we see that from the episode of Balak, right? When Balak called him to curse the Jewish people, right? Bila'am. So you know what he told him, right? He told him, if you should give me all the money in the world to do this for you, In other words, he wanted to take all his money away. Balak was a king. He had a lot of money. So he was telling him like this, you got to give me all your money, buddy. For what I'm doing for you, this is like a big job. You're going to have to give me everything, So that's what his thoughts were, how to take money from people, So, okay. So this is the idea, right? This is the Talmid, whoever has these characteristics, it's Talmid of Bila'Am. Just the opposite of Avinu. Two separate worlds, right? Why does Pirkeh Avot teach us this? What's the reason why? Because they say, right, when we talk about disciples and Talmidim, what are we talking about? We're talking about rabbis. This is what we're talking about. People who study with each other, Torah, wisdom, all kinds of things like this. So there are actually, what does that mean, right? There are actually also, you see from here, there are rabbis who are Talmidim of Bila'Am. You understand? This is what it's telling you. By the way, this is also corroborated in the Zohar Kadosh. Zohar Kadosh says, right, that before the time of coming Mashiach, there's going to be, right, rabbis like this, who are Erev Rav. That's why I call it Erev Rav. Erev Rav, right, means rabbi. So this is the allusion to that. So what does it mean? There's going to be rabbis like that, who are going to be in this world, who are going to be actually really real rabbis. With a hat and a beard and everything. Long penguin suits, right, everything. No.
Rabbi, do you think you're one of them?
Let me explain to you what this means. Right? There's going to be rabbis like this, Erev Rav. Right? What does that mean? That these people are hungry for money. All they think about is getting money.
Oh, right? You mean they're going to be...
Talmidim of Bila'Am. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
You understand?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry. I don't take it personally.
I apologize about the question.
It's all right. I don't take it personally. It's all good. It's all in good humor.
I thought you meant positive, Rabbi.
Whatever you say, David, couldn't hurt me because I love you too much. Nothing will hurt me. Believe me. I love you too much. You don't have to explain to me. I understand already.
Jimmy gave me an eye, and he's never given me this eye before.
No, it's okay. No.
It was not the eye of the
You could be saying those things day and night. I wouldn't get offended. Believe me when I tell you. I'm very serious.
Usually he has a smile about my stupid jokes, but this time it was like, whoa.
So
misunderstand. That's good.
it's okay. Don't worry about it. So I know that very well. So I'm telling you like this, right? That there's going to be in that generation rabbis like this who are totally into money, right? All they think about, right, is not to give the community Torah, to give them instruction, to give them something good. How much are you giving me? That's the question always, How much will it cost? Quando, how much?
Why are you saying there will be people like this? We're surrounded.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about now. That's it will be. We mean from there was already. This was 2,000 years ago. They wrote this. You understand?
Yeah.
So and they already predicted that this is going to happen. You understand? There's going to be rabbis like this who all their worry is about how much money they make. That's all they worry about. Understand? That's number one, right? Number two is also right that they have gava. The arrogance, right? Narcissism. They think they're God's gift to the humanity, like, oh, I'm, everything,
Right.
They don't have the humility to humble themselves and to roll up their sleeves and to teach Torah and to do people for the community things, that they need, to give them the services that they need. When they don't have these things, right, they're Talmid of Bila'Am. All they think about is themselves, like, what's going to...
Is this a warning for us?
I'll explain to you. Exactly, it is actually a warning. Yeah, actually it's true. So what I'm telling you is like this, right? That there are rabbis like this who all they think about is, what about my image? How do I look? How did I come out? Like I remember one time, I'll tell you something really funny, right? That remember when Bush the father got elected, the elder, right? The elder, right? 43. Was it 41? I'm sorry, 41. Right, so when he got elected, right? The first few months, what he was asking the community? He was asking America in the press, right? How am I doing? How's my performance? How am I doing?
Yeah.
That was his question. How am I doing? So I remember, one rabbi that I had. You know this rabbi, right? So once he gave a lecture, at that time, that period. So he says, I don't understand. He says, this president comes. He says, how am I doing? He says, that shouldn't be the question of president. How am I doing? He says, how's the country doing? You should be asking. What the heck? Who cares how you're doing? Like you're talking about, you worry about your own image. Like what your image is. How did you look? How did you come out? Who cares how you look? Worry about what the country's doing. That's what you should be worried about.
You know what Reagan did? And Reagan is worshipped now. The hostages, the Iranian hostages.
Yeah.
he told them, I don't want them released until I step into office, because he wanted to take the credit. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, right, we have to discuss that. But anyway, Rabotai, we see, right, that also, number 3, right, as we said, the other characteristic as well, they have a desire for money, as we said, right, and they have narcissism, right, only worried about their image, how they look. They don't care about what community is happening with the community, right? That doesn't interest them. And also Ain Hara, right? And what does that mean? They're looking to people to not to build them and to help them to become better Jews. They're thinking about how to destroy them, how to put them down, how to subjugate them. This is when a rabbi behaves like this. So why does it tell you this, Pirkeh Avot? What's the reason? Because right, when a person is looking at a rabbi, he should see, right, which side of the fence is he on over here, right? Is he a disciple of Bila'Am, or is he a disciple of Avraham? If he's a disciple of Bila'Am, run away from him, right? Run like for your life. Because a rabbi like that, you should have nothing to do with him. He's Erev. But a person who behaves like Avraham Avinu, humility, right, simplicity, right, all these kinds of things. So then right, that this is the rabbi you should get attached to. This is the one who's going to lead you to the right direction in life. You understand? So this is all practical. This is not just something, in theory, what we're talking about. Okay, Rabotai. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen, amen. Thanks for coming. God bless you. We'll see you next week. B'ezrat Hashem. God bless.
65.
No, what